Good morning. My name is Kristin Mayer. I use she, her pronouns, and I have the pleasure of welcoming you to this beautiful space and community this morning. I was lucky enough to grow up here, and this community was so important for me as I was going through, especially like middle school and high school when everyone's super awkward. And I was trying to figure out who I am and what do I care about and what do I believe and what kind of impact do I want to have on the world, and having this safe community to explore all those questions was so foundational to my growing up. So I just want to say, whether this is your first time here or you've grown up here, whether you know all the answers to who you want to be or you're still figuring it out, whoever you love, whatever the color of your skin, whoever you identify as, you are welcomed here, you belong here, and we're excited to have you here. I also want to mention there's a lot of really super fun stuff happening right now because we love Halloween here. We're showing Hocus Pocus this afternoon here in the sanctuary. And of course, next Sunday we'll be celebrating Halloween with the little kids and their costumes, and everyone should feel free to come in whatever crazy costume you feel comfortable wearing, because whoever you are welcomed here in all of the messy, crazy, fun wildness that you are. So welcome to Fountain Street Church, and ta-da.
Ta-da! Good morning, my friends. I'm Reverend Christopher Rowe. I use he, him pronouns, and I have the pleasure and the honor and the big responsibility in this season of serving as this magnificent church's acting senior minister. I'm out of breath there. It is good to be with you this morning. We are in the middle of a big weekend here at the church. We had a big fun fundraiser last night. We have another one this afternoon that Kristin mentioned. But as I say to you every week, for the next hour, you have nowhere but here to be right now. So get comfortable. Own the space of sanctuary within you, and hear this invitation to worship as we gather to celebrate the mystery and the divine that moves within and among all of us. Hear this prayer as your invitation to worship this morning. Welcome all who come in friendship, and all who long for genuine community. May you be graciously received in this cathedral of love as your authentic self. Welcome all who come in curiosity and in uncertainty, full of questions, or simply open to all this morning. May you embrace wonder and encounter new delights in this space. Welcome all who come this morning heavy with fatigue and weary from the troubles of this complicated world or the troubles of your particular life. May you find rest in this temple for peace. Welcome all who come in joy, for flowing rivers and gentle breeze, for changing skies and blazing trees. May you find the grace of the world within and among you, and may it leave a lasting imprint in this hour. Welcome all who come in thanksgiving for the altruism of the earth and its many gifts and the gifts of human care and connection and community. May your grateful heart overflow in this hour to everyone around you. Welcome all who have come to honor this church's past, to celebrate this church's future, and with gratitude for this present hour we share with one another. May you find belonging and hope and liberation and inspiration in this time of worship here. Welcome to all of you. Welcome to each of you. And welcome to the whole of your complicated and messy being you bring into this cathedral of love and this temple of peace this morning, where you have nothing else to worry about and nowhere else to be but here. So welcome to worship, my friends. You may be seated. We have a little bit of a Reformation vibe going on this morning. For those who are familiar with that "A Mighty Fortress Is Our God" hymn tune, though a week early. That is actually next week, but as Kristin mentioned, we're celebrating Halloween here, so we will be lifting up some of those themes of Reformation and reforming this morning. That is not exempt from this continued theme of "Let it begin with we," this idea that in life you sometimes say no to say yes in the messiness of multiple truths. And on that theme, we have been hearing from a litany and a roster of wonderful voices sharing their own experiences with saying no to something to saying yes to something else, and the intentional choice to let it begin with we. So I am so happy this morning that we get to welcome Reverend Kate Kooyman to our pulpit. Kate is a colleague and a friend of mine here locally in Grand Rapids, and so it will be wonderful to hear from her this morning. As we continue into worship and go deeper on that theme, hear the ancient witness that is brought to you this morning and told to us from the book of John in the Christian stories. Friends, hear what the ancient spirit is saying to our contemporary soul this morning. I am not speaking of all of you. I know whom I have chosen. But it is to fulfill the scripture. The one who ate my bread has lifted his heel against me. I tell you this now before it occurs, so that when it does occur, you may believe that I am he. Very truly I tell you, whoever receives one whom I send receives me, and whoever receives me receives him who sent me. After saying this, Jesus was troubled in spirit and declared, Very truly I tell you, one of you will betray me. The disciples looked at one another, uncertain of whom he was speaking. One of his disciples, the one whom Jesus loved, was reclining close to his heart. Simon Peter therefore mentioned to him and asked Jesus of whom he was speaking. So, while reclining next to Jesus, he asked him, Lord, who is it? Jesus answered, It is the one to whom I give this piece of bread that I have dipped in the dish. So when he had dipped the bread in the dish, he gave it to Judas, son of Simon. After he received the piece of bread, Satan entered him, and Jesus said to him, Do quickly what you are going to do. Now no one knew why he had said this to him. Some thought that because Judas had the common purse, Jesus was telling him buy what was needed for the festival, or that he should give something to the poor. So, after receiving the piece of bread, he immediately went out, and it was night. Our second witness this morning, which is our contemporary witness, comes to us from Howard Zinn. Hear what the spirit of hope and love in our time is saying to this congregation this morning. To be hopeful in bad times is not just foolishly romantic. It is based on the fact that human history is a history not only of cruelty, but also of compassion, sacrifice, courage, and kindness. What we choose to emphasize in this complex history will determine our lives. If we see only the worst, it destroys our capacity to do something. If we remember those times and places, and there are so many, where people have behaved magnificently, this gives us the energy to act and at least the possibility of sending the spinning top of a world in a different direction. And if we do act in however small way, we don't have to wait for some grand utopian future. The future is an infinite succession of presents, and to live now as we think human beings should live, in defiance of all that is bad around us, is in itself a marvelous victory.
Good morning, Fountain Street Church. My name is Kate Kooyman. I use she, her pronouns. I am ordained in the Reformed Church in America, which is in the Christian tradition. And so I come to bear witness to what the Spirit has revealed to me in that very Christian-shaped life, and I feel so privileged to be able to share in this community where so many different stories can come together to seek what the Spirit is saying inside and outside of traditions. And so thank you for welcoming me here today. It is such a privilege. I spent most of my ministry life not in a pulpit like this, but working on social justice and advocacy. And so it's great to be in a pulpit, but I will admit that I have always gotten nervous when I get up to do a sermon, and I am nervous in this moment as well. So thank you for being patient with me in the ways that I will fail this morning, but also joining with me and trying to listen to what the Spirit is saying to all of us. I don't work in ministry anymore. I have taken a little bit of a turn in my career, and now I work in politics. And so it's been a pretty busy season for me. In the last little while, I was out knocking on doors for a particular candidate for state senate that I'm supporting. You can ask me later. I was knocking doors this Friday in a local neighborhood, and I walked up to the door that was the next one on my list, and they had a car parked in their driveway with a bumper sticker on the back of it. And the bumper sticker said, "Jesus wins." And I started laughing because I had already finished my sermon today, which is, if you noticed, is entitled Love Loses. So I think we maybe have different perspectives, that person who drives that car and me. But there was a time in my life when I absolutely would have put a sticker that said Jesus wins on the back of my car. I was raised in the church here in Grand Rapids in a very white American evangelical version of the Christian faith. I spent about 99% of that time, I think, telling a story about winning, believing a story about winning. We talked a lot about resurrection, about heaven, about hallelujah. There was a lot of emphasis on bright sides, on silver linings, on hope. A lot of emphasis on the idea that Jesus wins, that our losses are just a preamble to something bigger and better that's just around the corner. And so, of course, it makes sense that I would have somehow metabolized the idea that if I follow Jesus, then I win. That losses that came my way would be manageable and temporary and always have a bright side. So imagine my surprise when, at age 17, my uncle knocked on my back door one Saturday afternoon to bring news that shattered that worldview. My dad had just turned 51 years old. He was a runner. He was a doctor, and he was dead. He had died before I was even able to alert the prayer chain so that we could ask for a miracle. One day he was here, and he was gone the next. And as you can imagine, because I'm sure you have also had unmanageable losses in your life, a lot of things died for me that day. A lot of things fell apart. And one of them was my understanding of God. Because when the worst thing happened to me, I didn't have any tools at my disposal because of the tradition that I had been given. I'd spent so much time on the bright side that I didn't have any language for or any spiritual muscle for a loss that was simply a loss, a profound and life-changing loss that would never be good. I didn't want a world that didn't have my dad in it. And I didn't want anybody to tell me that all things work together for the good. We live in a world where we see evidence of loss all the time. I don't think I need to tell you that sometimes the math just doesn't work out. You probably already know what I'm talking about. You probably know what it's like to do the right thing at great cost to yourself, and then you get screwed over for it. It doesn't work out for you. Maybe you know what it's like to deeply and vulnerably trust and then be betrayed. Maybe you know what it's like to desperately cling to hope, and then you just never get the thing that you need so much. Maybe you know what it's like when a loss is not temporary, it's not manageable, and where your effort has absolutely nothing to do with the outcome. And maybe you too long for better tools to experience the holiness of a moment of loss. You know, it wasn't just when I was 17 that I needed tools like that. If I'm honest, I didn't just have a faith crisis that caused me to want those tools, but I also needed them again because of a political crisis that I had. Maybe you were there. I needed those tools again in November of 2016. I remember after having worked so hard in the realm of trying to talk about immigration reform to Christians, feeling like I had done this hard work of talking with good facts, with logical ideas, with compelling stories. I had tried to talk people into caring about people who weren't them. And then this person who had spread so many lies about immigrants, who had caused so much problems in our community because of racism and all of this rhetoric, right? He was going to become the president of the United States, and it felt to me like I had lost. You know, a lot of things were lost in that moment, but I was having my own little personal crisis. I had to face another kind of crisis of faith that night, and this time it was my faith in the idea of progress and my part in it. I'd come to believe in this idea that I could really help shape the outcome because of my own hard, beautiful, good work, that we could together just decide we were going to make progress, and nobody could take that from us. I think I believed that somewhere deep within me, and so something fell apart that night when I watched the New York Times little gas dial thing go from the blue all the way into the red. I will never forget it. When 2016 happened, there was nothing I had in my progressive toolbox that helped me make sense of what I felt I was losing, what we were losing. Now, of course, I don't need to tell you that there's enormous privilege involved with believing that in the first place. If you are Black in America, you have long known that the system is not built to serve and protect you. If you're an immigrant in this community, you learned quickly that playing by the rules is a trap. There are no rules for you to follow. If you're poor, you know that hard work has nothing to do with success. The very idea that I believed I could control the outcomes of my life show you how insulated I was from the reality that most of the world knows from the moment they are born. But those experiences of losses that felt unmanageable and outside of my control, they did make me think. They made me struggle, and they made me long for better tools. Which is why, call me weird, I love the story of Judas. Judas is the one who betrays Jesus. Judas was loved, and he turned his back. So when we see the story of Judas and the deep betrayal, what we can see is that the love of Jesus was not always the winner. Jesus loved and Jesus lost. So what can the story of Judas's betrayal of Jesus tell us today about living in a world where things are simply not fair? I think there are three things that we see in this ancient witness today. The first is this: when facing a loss that Jesus could not control, what did he do? He surrounded himself with the ones he loved the most. And the text is really clear in the Greek about something that's fascinating to me. The one that the text calls the beloved disciple is described as not just sitting next to Jesus, but is described as leaning up against Jesus' chest. I bet you've never heard a sermon, I've never heard a sermon, about Jesus snuggling with his beloved. Take that, James Dobson. I love this story because it reminds me that when we are facing loss, we don't need to go straight to the front lines of the struggle. We can take a beat and be with the people who love us the most. When love doesn't win, love rests. Number two, what do I notice is that Jesus becomes visibly upset. The text says this explicitly, not just he feels upset, he's visibly upset. I love this because Jesus feels grief in his body. We would say today his nervous system got all dysregulated. I don't know what he did. I don't know if he yelled, or if he cried, or if he punched a wall, or if he threw up. I don't know what you do when your nervous system gets dysregulated. All I know is that whatever he did it right out where people could see him. He let it be seen. This is not a Jesus who tries to be stoic. He doesn't pretend to be above it all. He doesn't have it all handled. He didn't act like things were fine. Oh, that's such good news to me. When love doesn't win, love tells the truth. Number three, Jesus takes bread, breaks it, gives it to all of them, even Judas. When love doesn't win, love still treats people with dignity. So I love the story of Judas because it reveals to me that a God who loves loses, and a God who loses loves. I fell so hard for the idea of winning because whether it was evangelical Jesus that was going to win or if it was my progressive heart, my progressive politics that were going to win, I was sold on the story that I would get to determine the outcome. That our life and our faith and our success, that all of those things are a formula that we get to determine. I love that idea. But we don't get to decide what joys or what sorrows we will face in this life. We don't get to decide how people will treat us, how things will work out, whether people will follow the rules. We don't get to decide what the Supreme Court will say about our democracy in a few months. We don't get to decide who gets elected. We don't get to decide what rules they make. We do get to try. We do get to fight. We do get to knock on doors, and I hope you will. I still am. We do get to hope, but we do not always get to win. So, friends of faith, hear this good news. You will not always win. Love does not always win, but love always endures. And that, I do believe, is enough. Amen.
Oh, can we get an amen? I want to bask in it for a little bit. One of the ways that we show that love endures, that love is unconditional, that love is embodied, is through this weekly ritual of the offering. I've said to you before that I remember as a kid or as an early church musician, I used to think I would never want to ask people to give to the offering. But I have come to see it as such a richly powerful symbol and tangible action of love, specifically in this congregation, where 50% of it stays here so we can practice those truths that Reverend Kooyman shared with us, and 50% can be surrendered directly into the world, directly without judgment, directly without strings, just out into the world to magnify the power of love and the organizations that are doing with it what they can best. And so in the spirit of love and generosity and authenticity, the offering will now most graciously be received. It's time to rest. It's a fiercely complicated world out there. And if you're like me, it's a fiercely complicated world in here too. And it is in this space with one another, at the invitation of the words from Reverend Kooyman, at the invitation of the music and the Gloria, that we cultivate space to hold all of those truths. And so I want to invite you into a moment of prayer with one another. Will you pray with me? Spirit of losing, hold us now. Divine presence that time nor space can contain, be with us in this moment, in this cathedral of love, as we bring the whole of ourselves before you. Help us to have the courage to bring the heavy things, the things that weigh us down, the things that trouble us or keep us up at night. Help us to honor them as a fiercely important part of ourselves. Spirit of love, accompany us for all of us who bring our joy, our excitement, the things that make us swell, the things that bring us life and the sense of living. Give us the permission to celebrate and lift up and affirm those things, even in the complexity of the heavier ones. This morning we come into this house of worship, a people of messiness and complexity, aware of the losing and the loss that shapes our world. We hear these stories of violence in Europe. We see the ways in which the fullness of living is not affirmed in our own country. We can't help but feel anxious about an electoral cycle that captivates us. And many of us wonder to ourselves, what's next? Whether it's in this church we love, or our families, or our own hearts. Be with us in all of those places, Great Spirit. And give us the capacity to surround ourselves with the beloved. Give us the courage to tell the truth where it needs to be told. And give us the humility and the great peace enough to love unconditionally. May it be so. Amen. Thank you. You may be seated. Friends, we have a whole roster of announcements to share with you this morning. First of all, we like to make a connection and just kind of share with you what the younger ones among us are up to today. And so I think it's so appropriate that on this theme of letting it begin with we and this idea that we don't always win or can't change everything, all of our younger ones are also going deeper into that with a more embodied approach. The youngest among us, up through 6th grade, are actually working on the calendar of the year with world religious traditions. And so they are giving special attention to Diwali this week and kind of seeing their place in the broader spectrum of being and our global neighborhood citizenship that we have. Additionally, the middle school students are working on bringing beauty and connection and belonging to the world through creating, designing, and establishing a little free library that will go out front in our garden somewhere. This is a lovely way of our middle schoolers being able to recognize that they can't completely change the world, but they can give a wink, a nod, and a sort of hug to our community by saying, hey, we see you, we want you to feel connected to our church. Here are some resources we hope you'll enjoy. And finally, our high schoolers are doing a beloved tradition, which is both embodied and a way of fundraising and also a way of adding representation by painting the diversity stakes. This has been going on longer than I've been here, and it's just a wonderful way to represent not only Fountain Street Church, but a radical embrace of diversity, whether it's for LGBTQ inclusion or racial diversity. It's just a wonderful way to kind of extend our reach and representation in the West Michigan community through creating these diversity stakes that will then show up everywhere. I see them all the time, and my husband and I will say, oh, there's a Fountain Street stake. So it's very special. It's wonderful. I love that the high schoolers are the stewards of that important thing. So we're grateful for that. We had a magnificent Halloween hop last night. It was a successful event. We raised several $1,000s. We also had a good time connecting as community, surrounding ourselves with beloveds. I also want to say that there were some people who could not make it, and so they sent a donation, and we appreciate that as well. That is a beautiful gesture. We owe a great deal of gratitude, I swear I saw her somewhere, to Kathy Higgins, who was the organizer around that, as well as her husband, Jim. They generously donated a lot of the food. Marie Penny also was very generous with her financial and time resources in that, as well as a whole roster of volunteers, James Taylor, our DJ. So please help me in thanking them all for that. It was wonderful. Additionally, as it was mentioned earlier, we will have an event for the whole community at 4 p.m. today right here in the sanctuary for the streaming of Hocus Pocus, the 90s cult classic, not the current new one. And so please bring your family, your friends, your children, invite your neighbors. I know we have a lot of people coming from the broader community for that. That's wonderful. So that's at 4 p.m. right here in the sanctuary. On the continued theme of Halloween, looking out a week. Next week is Halloween/Stewardship Sunday. I'm finally preaching again, so I feel like I'll be doing my job, and so that'll be wonderful. And I am looking forward to lifting up and celebrating the career of Lydia Stubbs. She will be recognized in both the service as well as in a reception following, and so we will look forward to a festive and meaningful week next week. I hope you'll come in whatever makes you feel alive and full. I'll try to do a decent job this year on a costume, but don't quote me on that one. We have a big rally tomorrow evening in the sanctuary. The rally is for Proposal 3 in support of it, and it is both an energizing opportunity but also an educational one for anybody who is still curious or anyone who's in conversation with their neighbors and family and friends and need to be able to communicate why this proposal is so important. We know it to be important here at Fountain Street because of our long commitment to reproductive justice and freedom, and so we will have the executive director of all of Planned Parenthood in Michigan will be the keynote for that, and she will be coming with a pretty good presentation, as well as people from Reproductive Freedom for All and Narrow Pro-Choice America, a local physician, and it should just be a good hour to hour and a half gathering of learning and liberation, and so I really encourage you to come to that. It's also just a way for Fountain Street to show that we are with the community on this important issue. Goodness me. We have beautiful chancel flowers this morning behind Reverend Kooyman, and those were given in loving memory of Victoria J. Haffius, Judge and Mrs. Stuart Haffius, and Judge and Mrs. Cornelius Haffius by their family. And so we are so grateful for that generous and beautiful gift that they shared with us. You also might have seen that we have a special All Saints Sunday service that will be happening, and that will be the week after our Halloween one. And I just want to get this out there to start thinking about it. I really would like for everyone to bring pictures of people that they loved or mementos of them. We're going to create kind of an altar of remembrance up here, carefully not appropriating other traditions, but also lifting up some of the best that liturgy can offer a community as we celebrate our ancestors and also imagine the kind of world we want the children to come after us to inherit. And so I hope you'll consider bringing some things for that beautiful service. Then we also have the Election Eve service where we will be holding the complexity that you don't always win. Now, I want to win. I really do. I want to win in November. But I also want to model that you don't always win. And so the posture of that vigil on that Monday before election will be to hold all of that. I almost wish we had that beautiful sermon for that vigil because it's going to be grounded in love and in peace and in compassion and acceptance. And so I do hope you'll make it for that. It should be a beautiful time of just being present as a community and opening this cathedral up to the broader community just to rest. I think we can all use some more of that. But if you want to party, the very next day on Election Day from 4 to 6, we will be having an I Voted party for anybody who's voted to come in, get a free beverage and some snacks, and just mingle with one another right over in the social hall. We're grateful for Todd Johnson organizing that and some other members contributing to that and supporting it financially. Gosh, you guys, we have so many things going on, and it's beautiful. It's wonderful. It is good. It is good. It is good to be in community with all of you. This is when we shine brightest, and I think when we come together, it kind of gets at that first thing from the story of Judas where we surround ourselves with the beloved, and I am grateful for that. I'm also grateful for all of you. I'm grateful for the people that made this hour of worship possible this morning. A special thank you to Jonathan Tuuk, our organist. A special thank you to our choir and to Margie and to Austin. A special thank you to Reverend Kate Kooyman again for being with us. And a thank you to all of you who continue to show up and make Fountain Street Church not only your spiritual home, but available and open to the broader world who needs us most. May you go in peace this week, my friends. May we see each other again at one of the many opportunities we can gather. May you surround yourself with your beloved. May you find the courage, even just once this week, to practice speaking truth in the name of love. And may you give yourself even more permission to love someone else when it might be hardest in these coming weeks. Go in peace. And know you are loved and enough as it is to do this work. We'll see you next week.